The regularly scheduled meeting of the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy Committee meeting, which is taking place via teleconference on Monday, January 25th, 2021. Notice of this meeting was posted to the board's website on January 19th, 2021. As there is not a physical quorum present, a statement of necessity is read into the record and filed with the Tennessee Secretary of State as required by statute. Pursuant to TCA 844-108B2, if a physical quorum is not present at the location of a meeting of a governing body, then in order for a quorum of members to participate by electronic or other means of communication, the governing body must make a determination that a necessity exists. That determination must include a recitation of the facts and circumstances on which it was based. Further, TCA 844-108A3 defines necessity as matters to be considered by the governing body at that meeting require timely action by the body, that physical presence by a quorum of the members is not practical within the period of time requiring action, and that participation by a quorum of the members by electronic or other means of communication is necessary. As stated, this is a regularly scheduled meeting for the Tennessee State Board of Accountancy Committee meeting. The purpose of this meeting with members attending by teleconference is to conduct the quarterly scheduled meeting of the board in the most safe manner due to COVID-19. All voting will be conducted by roll call. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Maria. I appreciate that. We'll go right ahead into the committee reports. And today, I think for this quarterly meeting, Gay, your licensing committee has drawn the short straw because you've got a lot of action items to work through. And so we'll turn it over to your capable hands and leadership, and we'll work through those items.
Thank you, Kevin. Just as a reminder, in our May meeting of 2020, we agreed to extend all CPA credits that were expiring between April 1 of 2020 to 12/30/2020. Everything was extended to 12/31/2020. Now, in July 20, we had one extension request, which we approved. In October, we had 4 requests. And now in January, we have 11. And it consider another blanket extension. Just a few things to keep in mind. And then Pam, I want you to have some comments because I think you've participated in some discussions, but there are several states that have made extensions. North Carolina through March 31st, Alaska, California, Illinois, Maryland, Indiana, New York have all extended through June 30. Connecticut has extended through 12/31 of 2021. Minnesota through September 30 of 2021. And other states are kind of tied into governor's orders. So this, I'm just throwing this out here before we go through 11 specific extension requests. Some of the considerations that states have communicated have been how many parts the candidate has already passed. Is there a continued testing activity, or are they just sitting at home? Remember, we want to keep our candidates in the pipeline and not discourage them, as well as we want some diversification in our profession. And so again, we don't want to discourage people that are really close, but COVID has continued. You know, when we all went home in March, I know we all thought that we would be back down there on James Robertson Parkway this time, and we're not. So I just want to throw this out there before we get into these 11 specific request to see what the temperature is of people, because we'll have in May, we may have 20 specific requests. So with that said, I'm going to mute myself, and Pam, why don't you start, because I think you've had some discussions. NASPA has not made another extension, but there have been some discussion.
Well, I have not been part of discussions that are talking about a blanket extension. Primarily, they've talked about how disruptive this has been and how vital setting in place remote testing is, because we just don't know what the future holds. So I thought the workshop described that very well last week, as far as the need for this. Since I have, and I really don't have any input other than what you've said, some states have extended it. Since I have the floor, I will say, I think whatever we extend it to, we're going to still have just as many requests, because, it's just going to work like that. I think we're always going to have people asking for exceptions, but boy, in reading these, it's tough to be consistent, and consistency is so important. So it's a grave situation. My discussions, I'm on the CBT, which administers the exam, and it has been disruptive, but we've been told repeatedly that pretty much since the summer, that the test sites have been open and it's been pretty regular. What we're seeing now, it seems like to me, is that COVID is disrupting lives, not necessarily the testing itself. But I wish I had more for you. Maybe as we go along, I'll know the answers to some questions, but that's really all I have seen in my meetings.
Thank you, Pam. Does anybody else have thoughts concerning this? I mean, this whole COVID thing is pretty much out of the control of any one person, and going through our request, consistency is going to be difficult for sure. So please, anybody that has anything to say, this would be a good time, and you don't have to be on this committee.
I felt like the people asking for extensions were fairly conservative. They were March, they were April, some of them went to June, one went to September, I think it was one to December. And so I think we certainly ought to think about the blanket extension to at least June. I'll go to December today, but I would say at least June, possibly a September. I don't think busy season ought to have anything to do with it. It has, I guess, but I guess that's my thought. But again, people were fairly conservative, fairly realistic in their approach.
Any others? Judy, you're on the committee.
Sorry, I have to unmute myself in a couple of different places. And anyway, because I'm using my phone, it seems to pick up better than the computer. My thought, it definitely, this whole situation has definitely caused some hardships. I'm even dealing with my niece trying to get her situated to take the SSAT. And that's difficult. And ProMetric offers that as well. But COVID, I just got over it like a little over a week ago. I still feel fatigued. I feel sorry for these people trying to, manage life. And I don't know how we could, I don't know that we're going to be able to accommodate everybody, but I do think we want these people to take the test and to become licensed. So we have to keep that in mind. I do think a lot of them are having more time to study, actually. So hopefully the pass rate will reflect that sort of thing. But people are still somewhat scared to get out and go, like, be in a testing center and stuff like that. So I don't know. That's about all my 2 cents worth right there.
I was not terribly sympathetic toward the people who simply had not studied. There were one or two that really were simply saying it's not fair because I only got an extension for this amount and someone else got an extension for longer. And if we give a blanket extension, we're facing that again, of course. And we knew that and we discussed that when we decided it. I will say you're going to have some angry people. By doing a blanket extension now after the deadline, you're going to have some people say, I failed it because I rushed to meet the deadline. And if I'd known, I would have extended. So I don't know. I think the key is try to be as fair to as many people as possible. And blanket extension may be the best way to do it.
This is Janet. Can I make a comment? Uh-oh. This is Janet. Can I make a comment? I think I would be in favor of trying to come to, I guess, some date for a blanket extension, maybe at least to September, because from what I'm hearing, things aren't really going to get much better before that, maybe as early as the summer. But from what the scientists seem to be saying, it's not going to be much more than that. And, you know, if people have studied and or, you know, tried to rush through it or whatever, I guess my thought is that these are just unprecedented times, and we should be as lenient as possible with it. So I would be in favor of going out to like September as a blanket extension date.
Anybody else have any?
I'll say one more thing at the risk of hogging the floor. Based on what Janet said, you know, it's perhaps more compassionate to do what she's suggesting than to consider each individual case, simply because the way the vaccine is coming, you know, there are going to be different groups who can get it and who cannot get it. And so it will be a long time before that has taken effect. And you sure don't want people to have favorable circumstances because they were able to get a vaccine if someone were not able to get a vaccine. That's just an example of how people's situations all differ, and it's going to be tough to deal on an individual basis.
This is Todd. I agree that doing these on a one-off basis is going to make it incredibly difficult to be consistent, and also quite burdensome for this committee. I think if we could, you know, reach consensus on an extension date, September seems a little long to me, but I don't object to that. And just, you know, message very clearly, you know, for those that we worry about kicking the can down the road or other, you know, abuse of that, just message very clearly that, you know, this is a line in the sand. This is, you know, one additional temporary extension in light of incredibly unique, challenging circumstances caused by COVID.
And this is Kevin. I would kind of share the view. Actually, going into this meeting, I wasn't inclined to lean toward a blanket extension, but now based on what I've heard, and particularly based on the recitation of the other jurisdictions that are apparently granting blanket extensions to some degree, including the most populous states in the union that presumably have more exam takers even than we do, I'm pretty sympathetic to that. The one thing about the September 30 date that I do like, if we choose to grant an extension to a particular date, is that effectively, I think, would give us 2 meetings between now and September 30 to ascertain what the facts are, how the situation is developing, and determine if further action needs to be taken in advance of the expiration of that September 30 date. I'm not unsympathetic, Pam, to your remark that there are going to be those that rushed under the belief that there would not be an extension, a blanket extension, and may not have done as well as they otherwise could have if they had not rushed. And I'm sympathetic to that. But, we still have a number of folks, clearly as evidenced by these extension requests, that are personally affected. And I suspect many more as the spring unfolds will be personally affected.
So, a question on that, Kevin. The point that Pam raised, which I think is a good point, that we are going to have we do this, we'd have people objecting and saying, I rushed and didn't do as well. So which category of deadlines would that, for example, when would those people's times have expired that they would be prone to say that? Like prior to, because we gave an extension through December of 20. So what category would fall into the period where they would say I rushed? Which deadlines would they have been following?
And can't they continue to take it if they failed something before December and they were cut off? Then can now they take it again?
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Can we do something like that to cover those people who would complain, or otherwise we're going to get hit with a rash of requests to cover those exceptions. So if we're going to discuss this, I think we ought to discuss what we would do with those like now as part of this discussion, so that we can maybe incorporate something. I mean, I'm not naive such that I think we're going to just automatically approve this without further discussion. But if we do continue this discussion, we need to think about how would we handle those type of requests, and who would that be? I think what Pam just said would probably, if someone had a deadline prior to December and they rushed, studied while they were sick, did some things that they might not have done, and then they failed, and then that was their last shot. Is that the group we're talking about?
So, Larry, I think effectively, if we think about it, everyone who expired April 1st through December 31st of 2020 received an extension until December 31st. And so that's everyone's, or anyone who was expiring last year during the pandemic, their expiration date is now 12/31/2020. And so if this group decides to make an additional blanket extension, I think that if you said that anyone expiring 12/31/2020, you would grab all those people, and then, through September 29th, all of those people would then get an extension until September 30. And so collectively, you've got a year and a few months of folks that are all going to get an extension. Now, if you didn't want to give an extension to the folks who had already received an extension, you'd have to change those dates a little bit. The one other thing, I'm not against a September 30 deadline here. I do want to make sure you're aware. I'm not sure that any other state has gone that far. The list I'm looking at, there's about 8 to 10 states who have extended beyond 12/31, and most of them are till June 30. I think there's valid reasons for making September a date, but we would be outside of the majority of states that have given extra time.
Did she say Minnesota went to September 30th?
I think that's the only state that I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Okay, but yeah, I think more of them were at June. I guess the reason I would think beyond June is because that's the earliest time frame that it seems like the scientists are saying more people should be vaccinated. But I mean, they're behind now, even in Tennessee. Folks who were 65 and older were supposed to be eligible for vaccination in February. They pushed that back to March. So that's why I was thinking further out would be better, because it would seem like if it gets pushed back, which it seems more than likely would, we'd be back looking at the same thing again. But that's my thought.
I doubt that the age category that we're talking about, the students, are in September. I'm just
Well, no, I mean, I'm not necessarily relating it to that. It's just that if things are being pushed back, period, then I would think there'll be pushback for everybody, but
yeah.
maybe.
Well, those other states probably set their extension dates quite a while ago. Maybe, Wendy, is that the case?
Yeah,
So
probably.
they may well extend beyond where they are as well.
Right, that's true. Most of them have happened in the past few months. They were waiting on the AICP to suggest further extensions, which NASBA has told us they're not going to do. And so now some of these states are kind of going on their own and have the similar feelings to you all and are going ahead and offering extensions.
How far out has NASBA extended?
Just till 12/31/20. So they have not recommended anything further.
Right, okay.
From a blanket standpoint.
This is Todd. Have they recommended against it or just been silent on it?
My understanding is they've just been silent on it. The groups that they've had come together to discuss it have not come to an agreement to make a suggestion for a further blanket extension. Pam, are you saying that the CBT committee did not discuss further blanket extensions?
We have not recently. I mean, when we did earlier, there was not a consensus to do that, but not real recently.
Okay.
We've dealt a lot with the transition to the CPA evolution project and things like that as well. But anyway, I'll look back through my notes, and if I'm wrong, I'll let you know. But my recollection is that there wasn't a strong feeling that we should, and it was pretty much we're leaving it up to the states because each state is different. I think that has influenced a lot of discussions. The fact that you just doing a blanket across the nation extension means that a lot of people who don't need it, would have extensions. So anyway, I don't see one forthcoming. Now maybe we should check with the with NASBA, but I don't see one forthcoming.
This is Andy. I don't think that you're going to see one coming. They were pretty set on the fact that they thought through 12/31 was a good hard date. That, based on my view, I in talking around about it, they considered that anything past that should be on a case-by-case basis. And so they, and you see a lot of case-by-case. We can be kind of liberal on a case-by-case, but I had a young man call me in October and say, hey, can I get an extension on this? And his credits were going to run out in December. And I said, no. I said, we pretty much decided it's not going to go past October 31st. And so his reaction was he studied and he passed it in December and it's over. I mean, he's got a CPA license now. So I don't know. I'm not in favor of it. I'm listening. I definitely wouldn't want to go past 6:30, but I think that we're just kind of kicking the can down the road to have this problem the next time we have a hard stop, and that could be 6:30, and we'll be back here discussing it again. So I think that if we just do it on a case-by-case basis and try to be as liberal as we can on it, that'll pretty much stop it and go forward. But that's just, my view.
One of my concerns about doing it on a case by case basis is the candidates are probably hearing inconsistent information. Like you said, you told somebody that it wouldn't go past October. But I mean, and others are getting that time. And I mean, so that doesn't seem fair. It seems like if we could get some kind of information to the candidates such that, I mean, everybody knows the same information. I mean, if that's possible, maybe it's not possible to do that. But I mean, I think some leniency in this situation is appropriate because, I mean, this is a 100-year thing, and you just can't go by, to me, just standard kinds of rules and thinking.
Well, our meeting is in January, which some of these other states may not have gotten. They're now starting to get their specific extension request in. So it may be in the next couple of months. A lot of states are going to extend this automatically. It's just that it's early in the year. I don't know when other states meet, but I expect there's a lot of them may meet in the month of January. That's the only thing about saying, well, only, 10 or fewer states have put together a blanket extension. After here, does anybody else have any comments? I was going to ask our committee if anybody would like to make a motion to the full board for tomorrow concerning this, or do we want to just start in with our individuals? And if we do our individuals today, and then it looks like the states across the nation are going to adopt a blanket extension request, and yet we deny somebody today, then where does that put us if we feel like we need to do a blanket extension next quarter when we meet? Those are just some of the things that I've thought about in looking at the different cases. So are there anybody else have anything?
Can I ask Wendy a question? Wendy, do you know with the other executive directors what the thinking might be for, in other states? Have you all had a meeting or do you expect to have a meeting coming up soon?
Yeah, there were, we got together probably less than 2 weeks ago, and there's definitely folks on both sides of the table. There are some that are for extensions, and then there's some that are definitely not for extensions. So it is really, throw it up in the air, and you're going to get 10 states that think this way and 10 states that think another way. So, for example, California, with the lockdowns that they have, their Prometric test centers are down to 50% capacity. So it makes more sense. They went ahead with a blanket extension. They also have volume higher than really anyone else in the country to handle. But they have issues at the staffing at Prometric. So,
right.
Those are things that some states are dealing with, and those are reasons why they've gone with extensions.
Mm-hmm.
The states, it's based on executive order from the governor. They don't really have a choice.
Right.
And they have to do it. So, like I said, I believe there's 8 to 10 states who have gone beyond the 1231. I suspect there will be a few more, but there's plenty that are sticking to their guns. I talked to a state or two over the past week that have denied several, and they're sticking with the 1231. So
I went back and looked at my notes from the August meeting was the last time I could find that we discussed this issue in CBT committee. And as we were saying, and as Andy was saying, they really were focusing on how to deal with the hard deadline, not that they were going to consider, there was no consensus that we should consider a blanket deadline, a blanket extension. But, as I'm sure we've discussed before, what happens when Tennessee extends to September and other states are June? And do we then accept, or do they then accept our test parts that were taken during an extension that they didn't have? And then we also spent some time talking about what is a valid reason for an individual extension. And I think we all know that from dealing with this so frequently. So that's the last time we had an extended conversation about that. And like I say, I haven't heard that there's a thinking about extending. And I would think they would have come out and said that before December. Am I right, Andy?
Yeah, they did. I mean, I guess in all the meetings I've been in, they talked about a 12.
They said no, yeah.
Yeah, it was last, the extension. Because one of the reasons was the Prometric sites were open from July 4th or July 1 on, and that they were running above capacity in the states where the governors had not shut them down. And in the southeastern region, I don't think we have any other state that's extending past the 12/31. And the reason not is that there are plenty of seats, and the candidates could get a seat. And
as Judy said, the test scores after the initial extension in the early summer were considerably better than they've been in previous quarters. So as Judy said, that has happened. So I don't know.
I'm not on the committee, but I think I may be the only board member that hasn't shared some thoughts at this point, but I would support the September 3rd extension. I think Janet has made some really good points about the pandemic and the immunizations and when vaccines will be available and so forth. And also, I think Kevin's comments are really important. That September 30 would give us 2 more meetings to address this. I think all the states are going to have to deal with this. And I think my thought is that most states will extend until sometime in 2021.
This is John. I just have a question for Wendy. We have 11 people who have submitted a request for an extension. Do we know how many people may be operating on the presumption that their credit has expired at 12/31 and does not ask us for something? Do you run a report or something of what expires? I'm just curious.
We do not have a report. I'm sure there are people that are on the presumption that they don't have an extenuating stance and that they've expired. So, to go to the effort to submit a request and provide documentation takes some effort. And we have basically been advising folks that if you have an extenuating circumstance, provide us the request with the documentation. We'll be happy to take a look at it. So really been our message to these folks. If they haven't been out of work or they haven't had any illness in the family, they may not have submitted something or something outside of the norm.
Okay, after these discussions, our committee members, does anyone want to make a motion concerning a blanket extension through a specific date or not?
This is John. I would move that we would extend to September 30, I guess, for the ones expiring through September 29, based on the discussions we've heard so far.
Is there a no second? Okay.
I believe motion fails without a second.
Okay. So we will proceed. Do we want to change that to June 30, or do we want to just start in with our specific request? Okay, let's get started then.
I have a question. Procedural
Yes.
question. So, if I'm understanding this correctly, there's some document that's right here. Is there, can everybody unmute? Everybody mute?
You're breaking up, Larry, for me.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
Pam, are you on mute?
Hold on.
Yeah.
Here I am. Okay, I am so sorry.
Okay, so procedural question. The way I understand this failed at the committee level because the committee didn't second the motion. So in tomorrow's board meeting, can it be raised again from people outside the committee and the discussion proceed to another vote tomorrow? For example, if I'm not on the committee or Greg's not on the committee, which is true, and we would have seconded the motion if it had been the full board, but since I'm not on the committee, I didn't. Can it be brought up again tomorrow, Maria? Now, y'all keep in mind, I've seen Maria drinking out of something that looks like moonshine the whole time that we've been in the meeting. So we need to be aware that she may be a little bit, Maria, hold up that jar you've been drinking out of.
I just want to say that glass is better than plastic for your health.
There you go.
So I drink out of my range jar. It's water, for the record. Larry, I've never thought of that question before. My instinct is that no, but I will have to double check. And since maybe Wendy or Kevin might have better insight on that, it'd have to be something I'd look into. My initial thought is no, but that's just going off of just my knowledge right now. So
Yeah.
Can we have something except for a vote, like a show of hands of those who thinks it needs to be extended, and then maybe tomorrow we can bring that question up first before we go through all 9.
That's where I was heading, Andy. I go through all these 11 requests, and then tomorrow we decide we're going to do a blanket.
Maybe one way of dealing with this, I think technically as the chairperson of the board, I'm an ex officio member of each committee, is my understanding. And now that I'm kind of thinking through that and the mechanics, Maria, that you discussed here, if that's true, I could go ahead and cast a second, if you will, to John's original motion here with respect to that, to at least put it on discussion. Now, I think then the committee would still need to vote on that motion one way or the other, and they could vote it down. You know, that would be another possibility of at least bringing it to the floor on the committee side of things.
Back up before the committee then?
Do I need to put that back out there?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
You can? Okay. I've been contemplating, and I am not, I mean, June 30th, I agree with. September 30th, just, I don't know. I mean, that's why I haven't done a second. But, I mean, look, if you all, I mean, I'm happy. I'm on the committee. I'm happy to do a second. If you all feel strongly that September 30th should be the date instead of June 30th. So can we discuss that, even people aren't on the committee, why that you feel that September 30th is better than June 30th?
And we need to discuss it also because almost everyone who spoke was clearly in favor of a blanket extension. And then when the motion came up, it wasn't seconded. So I'm not comfortable with just throwing it out and considering 11 until we know more of the thinking from each person. And maybe June 30th is a compromise.
Yeah, that's why I brought that up, Pam. I got the feeling from the discussion that everybody was, or for the majority of folks were for it, but then when the committee didn't give a second, it was just kind of strange. So.
Yeah, that was a really great point, Larry. And I guess I brought up that September 30th date, and I'm not opposed to June, but I'm probably backtracking a little bit. But it sounds like we've been, as the board, have been telling candidates that they need to ask for an extension as if we're going to handle this on a case-by-case basis. So then if we turn around and go back and do a blanket extension, it seems like as a board, we're being inconsistent, which is a bit bothersome to me. So I'm just bringing that up. I'm not sure what to do with it, but it seems like it could be problematic that we are speaking out of both sides of our mouth. And how do we reconcile that? Because I think, Wendy, you said that we've been telling candidates, send in your information. We maybe told some candidate, well, you can't go past October. I just think as a board, we need to tell people one thing and do another.
So, I mean, everyone had an extension through 12/31.
Yes.
And so I don't know that we're being inconsistent. To this date, that was the extension we provided. And okay. we had decided as a board that these would be handled on a case-by-case basis. I don't think that means you can't change your mind today. You're only going to benefit a lot of people if you do a blanket extension. So if you choose not to do a blanket extension, then we're dealing with the 10 or so that are in front of us today, and the other candidates will see that you need to put your request together, and the board will consider it on a case-by-case basis. So I think we've just gone with what the board has determined to date. So in everyone that's been affected by COVID that had something expiring after April 1 has already received an extension.
Mm-hmm. So is that what we were telling candidates?
Yes.
The board has approved extensions through December 31st. So, okay, as long as we wouldn't be inconsistent with what, saying one thing and doing another, then yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I think.
I need to ask.
Go ahead.
Jay?
Yes.
You're the committee chair. I know it's me, you, Pam, and John. And what are your thoughts on this?
I have a little bit of a problem extending it out to September 30. I think June 30 is very reasonable. I realize we would have another meeting, between now and September 30, but I felt like September 30 was taking it a little bit too far, and that was my issue. But as far as being consistent, we have done. This is a whole different world, and we're doing the best we can. And I think we're trying to be thoughtful and reasonable with people's circumstances. These are mostly young people, which they may have small children. They may have parents they're taking care of. There's just so many things that are impacting people's lives. But June 30 was where, in my mind, that's where I was for a reasonable blanket extended date.
Also, Gay, in my recollection of these particular cases in front of us today, the only two where I think they were requesting or we would consider longer extensions were the two that were international candidates. Or maybe we had 3 that were international, where the travel restrictions are simply out of their control. But everyone else had a request prior to June 30 or to June 30.
Well, there was one guy that was asking for September 21st on one of his parts. But going back to too short or too long, and Janet's point on inconsistency and so forth, I think we risk looking inconsistent more so by going too short as opposed to too long. Because if you go too short and then you have to change it again, you just look wishy-washy. I don't see any harm if we look back and say, gosh, we went too long, too far. So in other words, if the group feels like we do want to do a blanket and the only question is, should it be June or September? I mean, I think we're all going to be tickled to death if we look back and say, gosh, this cleared up quicker than what we thought. And it makes it a whole lot easier to deal with going forward and people asking you, well, why did the people who expired earlier in the year get a better advantage than the ones in the middle of the year and have to change it again? I mean, like,
okay,
we're talking about people. I mean, I think we need to all put ourselves in the place of these candidates and say, how would, just think of what you're dealing with now and add to it small children and that kind of thing. So trying to work and anyway.
Wendy, would we get in trouble with administration of the test? Would we create a bottleneck by pushing a lot of their testing until late 2021? Do you see what I'm saying?
You know, I've not heard that as a concern with extensions. So the stat I have heard is that the more time you give people, the more they're going to take. So they're going to kick the can out and they're going to wait, and then they're going to maybe have another reason they need an extension because they've put it off. But it's human nature, I think. But I have not heard any concerns about testing center volume or ability to test. If
it just seems like everybody would be taking it in September then, you know what I mean? But
that's kind of like back when we started noticing that everybody was leaving early on Fridays, so we just decided to let everybody take Friday off. Then they started leaving early on Thursday.
Just John, I guess I would just point out that last May we extended 9 months from April 1st to the end of December, and we would be consistent here. I know the facts are different. In May, you didn't know a whole lot about what was going on. Now we know a lot more, but we're in a different situation with the vaccine and all that. But just to point that out.
Larry was convincing enough for me to give a second. I'm with him on that. I do think that I don't think we'll regret for extending it longer, but we may regret not extending it long enough. So I'll give a second to John's motion.
This is Kevin. You know, one of the reasons that I kind of favored September if we were going to do an extension at all was that I honestly think the pandemic effects are going to get worse between now and June before they get better. I do hope for some improvement in the summertime once the vaccination program really gets rolling and we see some results of that, plus just people being less cooped up indoors and maybe less likely to become ill in the summertime. That was kind of what was driving my notion of September being a more favorable option than June. And there's not a whole lot of science about it. It's just a kind of a gut instinct on on my part. But my view is, you know, I think we're going to be in for a rough next 3 or 4 months. And it's only going to be in the summertime when things start to really get better and pick up speed in the positive direction is my best guess.
Okay, John, you want to put your motion back up there?
I would move that we extend to September 30, credits expiring from December 1st to September 29th.
And I will second that.
Okay, let's have a roll call vote.
A. Moon,
Aye.
Pam Church,
Aye.
John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Judy Weatherby,
Aye.
believe that is the full committee.
Okay, I have a question now. This committee is going to recommend to the full board tomorrow that we do a blanket extension through September 30. Now, what if that does not pass by the full board tomorrow and we have not gone through the individual cases? What happens then?
I think by the motion that passed today, in my opinion, that means you would approve, this committee would approve through September 30 for all of these requests today.
Okay.
And so the only things you would need to discuss tomorrow would be if that does not pass on the blanket extension, then you would approve each of these until September 30. And then unless you wanted something further. So I think we had discussed on a couple of the international that we may want to do further.
Okay, so then we will take on a couple of those foreign individuals then. The first one is Sarah Al-Ghamdi. She is a Saudi Arabia citizen. Clearly, she now has until September 30th to pass. But because of travel conditions, Saudi is supposed to be opened back up around March 31st for her to get back into this country. So do we want to go ahead and give her, like we did 2 individuals from China until the end of the 2021 year? Any discussions, or do I want to wait until September 30?
I got to tell you, one of my biggest things about COVID is flying. I was already nervous enough about germs that I would certainly give consideration to waiting until the end of the year for anyone who's international that has to travel by air. That's just personal preference for me, and I have a lot of consideration for anyone who might feel the same way.
Do we have a motion to extend her till 12/31?
I'll make the motion that we extend international candidates to. Now that doesn't include, well, I guess it would. Never mind. International candidates until the end of 2021.
I'll wait for a second.
Let's just address our individual people individually, if that's okay. Sarah, do we have a motion to extend her 2021?
I'll move that we extend till 12. What date did you say, Gabe? The end of 2021. I'm sorry, what date did you say?
You're on mute, Gay.
I'm sorry. 12/31/2021.
Yes, so moved.
A second?
I'll second.
I second. I thought I had.
Okay.
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 Again, before we have further discussion, just on this particular one, she had sent some follow-up information. She is not trying to test in the U.S. She is going to there is testing in Dubai. I'm not sure she has to fly there. I don't know for sure, but she was able to get authority to go to Dubai in December. So she's not trying to get to the U.S.
Okay, I'm confused. I'm confused on what we're doing here because if we wind up granting this exemption through September, are we saying we're going to let everybody have, if it passes tomorrow, and then we're going to let everybody have through September, but then if you're international, we're going to go through case by case? I don't know. I don't understand why we can't just apply that September rule to everybody and then readdress it for September.
Because we have already extended some international candidates until 12/31/2021. So we're trying to be consistent with those that cannot access the country or cannot get into testing centers that are in their country or in a country neighboring their home country. That's why we're doing them a little bit differently.
Okay, while I have the mic, going back to John's motion, John, did you say for anything expiring, what was the beginning point? You said December 31st. Shouldn't that be January 1st? You're on
John,
mute.
you're on mute.
I said December 31st through September 29th. I think that was consistent with what was done last year.
So that December 31st is right. It wouldn't be January 1st.
So Larry, if you select January 1st, then all of the people from last year would not be included in your vote.
Okay, all right, I will.
Okay, back to Ms. El Ghamdi. I'm kind of trying to find where we were with that. We had a motion to extend her till 12/31/2021. I believe we had a second on that. So we are now ready for a roll call vote for this particular motion.
Thank you. Could I just have someone clarify? My notes say that the motion was to extend international candidates until the end of 2021.
It's only, we're doing the international individually.
Okay.
So this is for Sarah
Al-Ghamdi.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Gay Moon.
Aye.
Pam Church.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Judy Weatherby.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, I believe the next is Mr. Zong. Is that correct, Wendy? This individual is requesting an extension. He's not, we're having some trouble. He's a Chinese citizen, and we're having some trouble getting proof that he is actually not in the United States. We have requested proof that he is in China, meaning that he could not travel to take the exam. And we've also requested some information about why he has not sat for an exam since May of 2019. So this is one that I have a hard time giving him an extension for his credit that he's about to lose or has just lost. So does anybody have any thoughts on Mr. Zong?
I think we need full information before we can make a decision.
Okay. So Wendy, should we just defer this to us?
I think that he falls under the blanket extension, and he was only requesting through June 30 anyway. And so you could just leave him under the blanket, and then if he wants to go further, he can provide that additional information. Dustin, do you have any recommendations? Should we turn videos off? Do you think that that would help, or only videos for people on the committee, or?
I'm sorry, what's the issue?
Well, just a lot of freezing and
yeah, that might help. If you guys want to shut off your video, that might save a little bit of bandwidth.
Committee members have to stay on though, right?
Oh,
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
okay. All right.
Hey, sorry, I took myself off because I knew it was doing that. So, but I'm back on now.
Let's see. What's the next?
John, I'm
having a hard time.
I'm sorry. Are we okay with that plan for Zong that he just included on the blanket? Okay, Judy, yes.
Yes, I'm in agreement
Yes.
with that.
Gay, are you okay with that? Okay. Gay's just breaking up a bunch on me. I can't hear her or see her. The other one is Andrew Still. He's a Canadian
Am I still
permanent resident.
Okay. Andrew Steele is, can y'all hear me okay now? I've turned my video off because I think, okay.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Okay, Andrew Steele is a Canadian candidate. He had a part that was BEC expired in June of 2020, which was then extended to 12/31/20. Reg is expiring on March 31st. He's requesting a 6/30/21 extension. He gave some situations about traveling between the US and Canada. He has a 14-day quarantine. He's only asked for through June 30, so should we just leave him under the September 30 blanket rather than trying to get him until 31?
I think that's reasonable. they have open testing in Canada, which was not available to him, but he is able to test through June 30 in Canada. So he shouldn't have be hampered by the travel restrictions that he's been hampered by.
Okay, great. Then that's it, isn't it?
Yes, that's it.
Okay. All right. So we will move on to our next item.
Can I ask a question before we leave this?
Sure.
Was John's motion to extend through September 29th or September 30th?
September 30th.
Okay.
So to clarify, Janet, anyone who expires December 31st, which would be everyone from last year, expiring through September 29th, would all receive an extension until September 30.
Okay.
Anything else on our extensions request? Okay. The next item on our agenda was we have been asked to approve the FINRA Series 52 testing for municipal securities representative qualifications exam, for that to qualify as CPE. We have previously approved some other FINRA exam Series 63 as management services and FINRA exam Series 65 and 66. The way that there's a little formula to that, you take 5 times the number of hours an exam is supposed to cover, and the candidate can get that number of hours, but it cannot exceed 50% of your total CPE hours. Did I say that right, Wendy?
Yes, correct.
Okay. So this exam is supposed to last 2.5 hours. So do we round that up to 3? Or do we say 2.5 hours so it would be eligible for 12.5 hours of CPE?
Well, the way I look at it is the CP hour is 50 minutes. So this is 3 hours.
Okay. So the person would be eligible for 15 hours. So we're not approving it for this specific person. We're trying to approve the actual exam so that if anyone else takes this exam in the future, we don't have to go through this approval process. Tennessee follows the NASBA CPE guidelines, and the technical fields include business law, economics, taxes, specialized knowledge, finance is just part of it. The situation here is the CPA has moved from public accounting to tax strategies role at a bank and will be dealing with municipal bonds. So we've been provided with the course material or what the test is covering, and 60% of the test is covering municipal bonds. I believe 14% of the exam covers economic activity, government policy, and the behavior of interest rates, and then 26% covers securities law and regulations. So included in that 60% for the municipal piece of it, there are taxes, taxable municipal securities. They talk about tax-exempt commercial paper. There's a whole section on tax considerations, federal income tax status, state and local income tax status, premiums and discounts, capital gains and losses, original premium, market discount and premium. It all includes customer suitability considerations, which would also encompass the whole tax status. And then there is a section under that municipal piece of mathematical calculations and methods, which would also have to do calculating taxes. So there's quite a bit of this exam. And then, of course, the 14% that deals with the economic activity, and then the other piece that talks about securities laws. There's a lot of these topics that are covered under our NASPA guidelines. So does anybody have any comments about whether or not we should approve this CPE, this testing series for CPE?
This is John. I felt like they should be approved. I think have already approved the 63, 5, and 6 series, and some of those are sales and advisory and what have you. And I felt like this was just as relevant, if not more so, than some of those.
I second that.
Do we have a motion?
I was seconding. Did John make a motion?
I guess I didn't technically make a motion, but I would move that this FINRA Series 52 exam qualify for credit.
I second.
What category? Should we say what category?
Well, in looking at the NASPA areas, the others were management services, the other FINRA exams. But I do feel like this should be under the technical fields of study rather than non-technical. So probably management services, which would be consistent with the other FINRA.
You could also do specialized knowledge just with the specific nature of this.
Do we need to specify that or with this motion, or should we, or does that matter?
I think that we do need to, the board needs to determine whether it be technical or non-technical. I'm not sure it's important to figure out where in technical it falls, but based on the information you gave, Gay, there are multiple areas in the technical that it falls, meaning there's brokers and dealers and securities is under specialized knowledge. There's an economics section under technical. So there's various areas, but I think classifying it as technical would meet the requirement, and we should clarify that today.
May I amend my motion?
Yes, I guess.
I move that the FINRA Series 52 examination qualify for credit under the category technical services.
Judy, do you want to second that again, or do you want me to?
I will second. I'll second. Yes.
Okay, so we're ready for a roll call vote. The committee is aye.
My apologies.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Judy Weatherby.
Aye.
Okay. Our next item is a firm name request. This is something that we haven't had in a little while. But a gentleman, Mr. Stanek, is wanting to focus his practice on the dental practice. and he has proposed a name, National Dental Accounting. And it has been brought to us as a result of a question of whether or not it would go against rule number 0020-03-.15, little 3, little b, containing any representation that would likely cause a reasonable person to have a false or unjustified expectation of favorable results or capabilities through the use of a false or unjustified statement of fact as to any material matter. He does say that he currently has only one dental client, but is looking to really focus his accounting practice on dental practices across the country. So I think the question is the word national. Is this misleading to a reasonable person? Discussion.
I think so. I think that's misleading. In some way, it seems like it's endorsed somehow since it's national. I'm not sure what y'all think, but that's my thought.
I thought it sounded like a national certification, but Wendy, do we have other firms that have something like that in their name?
Give me a second and I'll search.
While Wendy's looking, would we have any problems if it was the U.S. dental accounting practice or an all-American dental accounting? I was just trying to figure out.
Well, should we discuss each term? Does the dental specialty, is that a problem? And then is the national a problem? I wondered if we should discuss both.
Pam, I brought it to you for both reasons.
I have trouble with both, and I think the fact that he only has one dental client says that this is misleading just for that, but also it implies some sort of an endorsement by somebody saying this is the company to go to for dental accounting.
This John, I think I'm focused more on the national maybe. We would have known how many clients he had if he didn't tell us. Could have had 10, could have had 100. He just happened to tell us he has one, which questions, I guess, specialization and experience maybe. Does that make it misleading? It seems like it's maybe more, the most relevant for me is the national. Is that some type of, like you said, endorsement or accreditation type thing?
I have trouble with both of them, but Wendy, again, maybe you can tell us, is it okay? Do we have others that imply a specialty? I know we are more lenient than we were than the board was years ago.
I haven't found anything with national. Karen found accountants and business advisors for physicians. So their claim, that's showing a specialty in an area, but they don't mention national.
I don't have so much of a problem with dental just because I know there are people out there that do focus on a very specific type of client. It is kind of, he does only have one, but he's following the other rules. The national just, that's a little questionable. I mean, he's got one client and that's it right now. At some point he may grow his practice, but right now it's not at a national level.
I think we'd probably have to let him have the dental simply because maybe it could be a new practice and that person was targeting dentists. So if somebody can have 4 physicians, we probably have to grant him the dental. But I have trouble with the national.
The name you threw out, Wendy, can you repeat that again?
Accountants and business advisors for physicians.
Would we have a problem with that in this instance for dentist?
I wouldn't, because it doesn't really, to me, it doesn't have that like endorsement accreditation type.
So if he shortened the name to dental accounting, then that would be acceptable.
Like dental accounting group or associates or, you know, endeavor, whatever you want to call it. But I think the word national indicates something more than what they are. That's my
This is
thought.
Todd coming in from not on the committee, but I think the associates or group piece would be problematic if he's solo. I don't remember if he said that or not, but I think the national piece goes to, in our rules, representation about capabilities, and I think that's the problematic piece. If you're more than misleading, it's about a representation of capability.
So if he had, if he was just like National Dental Accounting, we would be okay with that. I mean, that's pretty localized and limited. It's just this national gives off the vibe that he's doing this across the country, or like Judy says, has some type of accreditation with him.
So this is Larry, also off the committee, but I'm not sure it's our place to tell him what name he should use. I think we should just approve or not approve the one he suggested, but I don't think we should be telling him what would be okay. It's up to him to come back with another name.
This is Andy. I kind of agree with Todd and Larry, but in that same statement, I would say we're willing to drop the national if he needs a name like right now. But yeah, he'd have to bring back any kind of deviation to that without, because I don't think it's in our place to tell him what his name is.
I guess I feel like if we deny him the ability to use that name, we ought to at least tell him which word or what it was, so that he doesn't come back and he says national accounting, or, you know, he does some other thing and it's the one word that we didn't agree with. So that's the only reason I feel like we ought to let him know what the stumbling block was.
I think the stumbling block's national, personally.
Yes, I do too. Do I have a motion from the committee?
A motion that we disallow the current name that they're requesting.
A second?
Do we need to say on the basis of the word national?
I would prefer that, Pam, so that we can better communicate to him the reason for denial.
Judy, you want to revise your motion?
Sure. I make a motion that we disallow the name National Dental Group. Is that what it was? Or I can't remember.
National Dental Accounting.
Based on the term national.
Okay,
It's misleading.
Can I ask a question? If we go back and say that we had a problem with the word national, and so he comes back with Tennessee Dental Accounting, that's misleading too. I mean, I think if you're going to get into trouble picking out the one word that bothered us, I think you deny it based on it being misleading, and then let him come back with another one. If we just say it's just the word national, he can pick any word he wants to and put in front of dental, and we're going to have to approve it. What if he says Nashville or Tennessee, or what if he says Southeast? Southeast is going to be just as bad.
Fair point, Larry.
I'm not on the committee, but that's just.
But he'd have to bring that back to us, and we could deny it that, whatever he comes up with.
This is Kevin. I think the process would be if this request is denied, he cannot use it as the name of his firm, and he will have to come up with his alternative, and then that would be submitted to staff for review. And in this case, because of the concerns that Wendy had, she decided the full board needed to weigh in on that. As I understand it, for what I would call more routine requests that are clearly in line with our rules, typically the board doesn't need to act on those. That Wendy basically has the authority to move those along. Is that right, Wendy?
That's correct, Kevin.
So he's not going to be able to practice unless he comes up with a name and submits one that is, deemed acceptable by Wendy, or if not, then by the full board if it has the controversy around some aspects of the rules that this one did.
You all may be able to deny the rule just using that wording from the rule, and we can just go with that it doesn't meet the requirements of the rule that Gay laid out, and then he can go back and figure out what different name he wants to use.
Okay, Judy, do you want to revise your motion?
Sure. I make a motion that we deny the applicant's name request. Did we say due to the misleading nature, or what do we say? Just the requirements.
That it goes against the rule number 0020-03.03.
Yep,
that. Is there a second? Wendy, do we need to read that rule, or can we just reference?
You can just reference it. It's fine.
Okay.
To clarify, it's 0020-03-.15 3 little b.
Yes. Is there a second to that motion?
I guess I would just make sure the motion would say that we deny the name because we believe it's considered misleading under that rule. And if that's permissible, then I would second it.
I'm good with that.
Roll call.
Kay Moon.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
John Griesbeck.
Aye.
Judy Weatherby.
Aye.
Okay, the last item in the licensing committee is a course from Belmont University. It is an ethics course in the accounting department that NASBA has asked if we would accept this as an accounting class for the purposes of sitting for the CPA exam. NASPA is finding that a lot of classes are getting put under the accounting department of universities, and so they're kind of slipping through. But when they start looking at some of the course material, it may not be as accounting oriented as it should be to be considered an accounting class, as opposed to just general business coursework. So they've provided us with the activity, what the class covers. There are 10 classes that meet either virtually or in person. 3 of the classes deal with Tennessee ethics. 2 classes deal with the AICPA Code of Professional Conduct. The final exam also has an essay question that deals with the AICPA Professional Code of Conduct. So discussion as to whether or not we want to approve this as an accounting course for sitting for the CPA exam. Pam, you may have some thoughts on that.
I guess I did go back and forth on some thinking about this, but this particular course I don't have a problem with because it focuses on accounting ethics. The gray area is, what if it's a business ethics course? I can tell you that Texas is very picky about their ethics course. You have to have a course specifically approved by the Texas State Board. And one thing they look at is, do you cover the Code of Professional Conduct? And do you cover your state's ethics requirements? So that's what I would look at before we consider this. That would be my criteria for counting something as an accounting course.
Gay, can I clarify? So first of all, for anyone on the phone, this was an item added to the agenda at the last minute this morning. So I did send it off to the board members this morning. So just to clarify that piece. And second, I sent 2 attachments to you all, and I want to make sure that we're referring correctly. So the first attachment is the course that we are considering today. And the second attachment is a course we approved 1.5 years ago or so you could compare. So I just want to make sure we're not confusing which course and the aspects of the course. So look at the first attachment I sent you. It's a course from Southern Indiana, and it is more loosely accounting than I think we approved before. But as you all discussed, I just want to make sure you're looking at the right information.
I think I was looking at the wrong one. We've already done Belmont, is that correct?
Correct. That's an example. That's an example of what we had already approved. And the first attachment is what you're considering today.
I got them switched. Sorry about that. Okay. Pam, you look like you're muted, Pam.
Well, good, because I was rambling, but lest I sound like I didn't read this stuff, I did read it. And so I was coming to the meeting ready to say, these are my criteria, so we shouldn't include it. And then Gay said, oh, it doesn't include it. So I thought I had looked at the wrong one, and I was frantically trying to call it up. I'm not saying we shouldn't necessarily approve this. It has the word accounting in there quite a bit, but it does not have the Code of Professional Conduct, am I right, Wendy? Nor the Tennessee ethics. Now, we don't have to go by what Texas does, but of course we have no problem counting it as a business course. And there are things that get counted as accounting, like if you had this was more accounting leadership, right? if you had just an accounting leadership course, what it takes to make it in the career of accounting, would we count that as an accounting course? And I think it's a very gray area.
I thought the write-ups from the NASBA team and also Sherry were very instructive. You know, if you go look at the Belmont course that was approved, it looked pretty obvious. And as NASBA pointed out, the one thing missing here is the syllabus. It really doesn't talk about the topics, sort of like the Belmont one did. And it just mentions the videos or movies and the books to be read. And I thought they were very good comments that were given to us. And it's certainly a lot more gray in my mind than the Belmont was in terms of, is this accounting?
You know, this is Kevin. One thing that I was focused on, I actually felt pretty good about this course, mainly because I was looking at the course description. Let me see if I can pull that up again, you know, which says, you know, financial statement fraud came clearly into focus as a result of a series of accounting and auditing scandals in the late 1990s and early 2000s. This course will use a case study approach and professional standards and codes of ethics to explore basic ethical frameworks as they pertain to business and accounting scenarios, as well as to introduce students to fraud prevention theory and guidelines for practice. That's what got me kind of feeling a little bit more comfortable that this had enough accountingness in it, you know, to measure up.
Any more comments?
Well, it doesn't have to be an accounting ethics course. And the criteria I was talking about really deal a lot with, is it an accounting ethics course? So that goes back to what I was saying. Let's not look at whether it's an accounting ethics course. Let's look at whether it's an accounting course. And it certainly includes other things. The ethics course at Rhodes certainly includes general business ethics as well as accounting ethics. So we don't require an ethics course in Tennessee. So we're not trying to do that. So I'm just trying to focus us on what criteria do we need to look at. The question is it enough accounting? That's the question.
Does it say what the case studies, I mean, they don't really talk about if those are accounting case studies? Or am I missing that part of it?
Yeah, I guess at least in the reading materials, it mentions, you know, one of them is Enron, the smartest guys in the room. That's one of the books. And then there's a specific citation to a reference in the required materials for a book by Jackson called Detecting Accounting Fraud, Analysis and Ethics. And then there's another one by Ferguson called Inside Job, relative to Sony Pictures. I think that's what he's talking about, the massive cyber attack there. So I'm just going by the required literature, you know, that is listed in the syllabus. Yeah. It looks like it's going to focus on accounting and auditing scandals in the late 1990s and 2000s. And so that's why, to me, those books made sense.
Okay. Any other comments? Pam, you're muted.
Oh, I'm talking myself into saying yes, the goals of the course are accounting goals. So I do think that's the focus. The book that Kevin mentioned to me is a clear indication that it is focused on accounting. What we don't know is how much time is spent on that. But I think there are a lot of other courses that are similar in their split between accounting and other topics that we call accounting.
Okay, we have a motion to accept this as an accounting course.
This is Janet. I just have a comment before your, I'm not on the committee, but it seems like to me, with the information that I can glean from the documents, that this is somewhat more similar to things that are taught in like an ethics course, more so than accounting. So I don't know that it looks like it has enough accounting in it to me.
Well, I think that was one reason why Wendy included the course from Belmont showing how some ethics courses can have so much accounting woven into that classroom instruction that it could count as accounting. But again, this is the reason why NASBA has presented it to our board to see if we would accept it as accounting courses for the purposes of sitting for the exam. Any other thoughts or comments? Do we have a motion to accept this as accounting course?
I'll move that we accept it as an accounting course.
Thank you, Pam. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
You'll second? Okay. Any discussion, any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Gay Moon,
Aye.
Pamela Church,
Aye.
John Griesbeck,
Aye.
Judy Weatherby, sorry, I didn't hear Judy. Did anyone else?
I think we've lost her.
Okay. Do we need to, we have a majority of our committee that voted to pass it. Is that, oh, there's Judy. Judy?
Looks like her audio is disconnected. Judy, can you try and you can either call into the meeting or have the audio come from your computer. If you hit the more options button, it's the white button with 3 little dots at the bottom. Looks like she might be getting her earpiece in there. There we go. Judy, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can now.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Judy, I think we voted on this last added agenda item on the course from the ethics course. And so the motion was to approve the course. So we need your vote on that.
Okay, I will vote in favor of that. Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I think that's all for the licensing committee.
I think you all have done more than your share of work and deliberation, and appreciate the thought not only from the committee members, but also the entire board that ultimately weighed in, particularly on the exam extension issues. What I would like to do or propose to do is that we take a 10-minute kind of bio break here. I'm showing it's about 2:45 Central Time. And so if we can, I would recommend keeping your connections open, but muting your audio and video. And we'll resume at 2:55 with the Enforcement Committee. Morning. I think most people are back. I think I see Pam may need to come back into view here, and then we'll go ahead and get started. And also need to see Andy, since he's going to be leading us through the enforcement report, committee reports. There's Andy. I see him.
I'm here.
What we'll do again logistically to kind of maybe smoothing out the communications, it would be just to ask the committee members to leave their videos on for this particular view. And if you're not on the committee, go ahead and leave your videos off. And then we'll go ahead and proceed. I think we have everybody back as far as I can tell. Let's see. I saw Janet, I saw Pam, saw Greg, and saw Todd. So Andy, I'll turn it over to you to lead us through the enforcement committee activities here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to say that just right when you think you're on one of the more challenging committees, licensing jumps up and takes that away from you. So great job, licensing committee. I know that was challenging today. We've actually sent out 3 types of reports for you today. You got the legal report, the synopsis of it, with a breakdown between consent, proposed, and re-representations. Also, the guidelines for penalties, for civil penalties, and so those references as you may need. We're going to start with the legal report. As we start with the consent agenda, we've got 7 that are on there. And I would like to go ahead and not only on this one, but the next one too, just let Maria know that on number 7, we're going to ask for her comment. And also on number 9, we're going to ask for her comment for an update. And on number 7, we're going to ask for a comment as to how is this different than what we've done in the past. So let's start with a consent agenda, number 1 item. The board received a complaint indicating that the respondent's business includes the word accounting in its name and it's misleading to the public, and that they are a CPA firm. Respondent was unaware and has since is going to rectify it by changing her business name and then all of her license and filings. So the recommendation there is to close with a letter of instruction. And as before, we'll go through each one of the 7 and then ask for any comments. If there are none on each one, then we'll vote on all 7 at the end. Any comments on that one? Okay, seeing none. The second one is the board received a complaint from a former client stating that the respondent breached his fiduciary duties in the course of an engagement involving the complainant's deceased aunt's estate. The respondent states that he had no direct input regarding the co-executor's fee, and that it was approached by the co-executor once a dispute arose with the complainant regarding the reasonableness of fee. We sent out an investigator, and the matter was referred to the investigator for review, and no violations of Tennessee law and rules were found. The recommendation here is to close this case. Any comments or questions? The next one is a little bit longer, number 3 on page 3. The board received notification of an action taken against the respondent by the Tennessee Supreme Court's Board of Professional Responsibility in April 2018. The respondent did not disclose this discipline during his license renewal in December 2018. Respondent stated that he entered into an agreed settlement with the Board of Professional Responsibility regarding a complaint against him in this role as an attorney. This agreed settlement took effect in July of 2018. The respondent states that between April and July of 2018, he took steps to pause practicing law and transition his law clients to a successor attorney. During this period, this time period, respondent states that he called the Board of Accountancy to self-report his discipline and seek guidance on the next steps regarding his CPA license, and any need for reporting. Respondent states that board staff informed him that since his disciplinary action was not involving any breach of fiduciary duties, actions in his capacity as CPA, or his ability to represent clients before any government authority in his role as a CPA, he did not need to take any further action. Respondent claims that he specifically asked about his license renewal in December 18 and how to answer any questions that might deal with settlement. Respondent indicates that he was told that he did not need to report the document in writing anything further in this matter due to the fact that no complaint or disciplinary action had been initiated involving his license as a CPA. The board has no record of respondent contacting regarding the matter. Furthermore, respondent answered no on his renewal in response to the inquiry surrounding disciplinary matters. Respondent further stated it was not his intent to ever withhold the disciplinary action. Respondent gave an interview to his local news or to his local paper discussing the issue and the suspension. Respondent apologized for the gross misunderstanding and reached out for guidance on how to rectify the matter. Since the suspension in July 2018, respondent has been readmitted to the practice of law in all jurisdictions in which he was suspended. The recommendation here is closed with a letter of warning. Do any of the committee members have a comment or question on that?
I have a question. Has everyone on the board who this individual may have gotten this information from been instructed on how to, so that, you know, this wouldn't happen in the future if it ever happened at all?
Janet, I have reached out to staff and clarified how you handle someone calling in with information like this. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we've reiterated that. And
that's perfect.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
This is Todd. Did we get a, I assume so, but just want to ask, did we verify was there an article that came out of the interview?
There was. So that's kind of why, I mean, when I looked at it, I really don't think he was trying to I don't think he would go, give this to the paper if, he was really trying to be sneaky about it. So that's kind of why I went with this recommendation.
Yeah, kind of constructive notice.
That was kind of my thoughts too, is that if he's willing to do that, but, and I like what Wendy said, that we have taken steps now to make sure that this will not happen again, that the question will be brought up to Wendy as appropriate. So any other comments? Okay. Number 4, complainant retained respondent in March of 2020 to do his business bookkeeping and taxes. And August 2020, respondent informed complainant that his bookkeeper quit, that he would no longer be able to handle the account. Complainant alleges that respondent's billing was excessive for the 6 months that services were performed or were provided. The complainant also states that ceasing the engagement prior to completion was unprofessional. While respondent is a licensed CPA, with the board, this matter is primarily a fee dispute, and it's not within the board's jurisdiction under Rule 20.04.03(3). So recommendation here is to close. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. Respondent holds a CPA license with the board, number 5, and was selected for an audit of the continuing professional education for the reporting period 2018 to 2019. The respondent was deficient in 2 hours of board-approved Tennessee state-specific ethics. Respondent was notified of the deficiency and had given 30 days to complete the course. Respondent requested an extension to complete the course and was granted an extension until 10/15/20. On 11/10/20, the board had not received further communication nor the penalty hours owed from the respondent and initiated the complaint. responded to the complaint stating that she originally submitted 4 hours of ethics with the original request. However, none of the hours qualified as Tennessee specific. Respondent claims that the earliest she could enroll in a class that met the requirements was November the 17th of 2020. Respondent completed the 2-hour course and submitted proof with response of her complaint. The recommendation here is to close with a letter of warning. Any questions on number 5? Number 6, a member of the public advised the board that respondent was using the term non-practicing CPA on his business website as well as his LinkedIn profile. Respondent does not currently hold an active or inactive license in the state of Tennessee or any other state. The CPA license was issued in the state of Michigan in May of 1989, but the license expired without renewal in 2011. In this response to the complaint, the respondent confirmed that he was a licensed CPA back in the state of Michigan from 1989 until 2011. A respondent affirmed that neither he nor his company has ever issued any audits, reviews, compilations, or any other test engagements. Respondent has removed references of CPA from his website and LinkedIn page and closed with letter of instruction as a recommendation. Any questions on that one? Okay. Number 7. This one's kind of different. This is a new area that we're going into and on the recommendation side. That's the reason I want Maria to kind of update us on this a little. During renewal, the respondent self-reported an ongoing civil matter. The civil lawsuit alleges negligence in providing tax advice related to Section 1031 like-kind exchange transaction. Upon request, the board received additional information from the licensee's attorney, including copies of court documents and correspondence, as well as the current status of the matter. It is a civil matter. In the past, we probably would have tagged this and said it would go to litigation monitoring and updated on every quarter. And as we all know, once you get on that list, you kind of stay there forever. So I see this as kind of a turning point in what some of our recommendations are. The recommendation from legal is closed and have the respondent sign a consent order requiring respondent to provide the board with pertinent information regarding the civil matter, as well as the final disposition of the matter once it is concluded. So with that, I would just say, it kind of makes sense to me, but I wanted to bring it to the board and let everybody understand that this is kind of a change. And I'll let Maria jump in and tell us her comments on it.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, this is something we've been talking about within legal, just because, like you said, a lot of these go into litigation monitoring and they just sit there. So after looking at the law and rules of the board, licensees are only required by the statute to report felony convictions. And so, like we noted, the negligence in the civil matter. At this point, the lawsuit is still pending. Anybody could, kind of the thought behind this is that anybody could file a lawsuit against anyone for something like this. The respondent's attorney seems pretty confident that this is a frivolous suit and that they will, have the case dismissed. But there again, we don't know. So I talked with Wendy and we discussed maybe changing some of the wording on the renewal application or just the application in general about what is required to report, because a lot of times we get licensees reporting out of an abundance of caution. They just want to make sure that, they're in line with the law and rules. So just looking at this, at this point, this particular respondent hasn't, broken any of our law and rules. Now, if it does come out that he is, guilty of negligence and all of the things alleged in the complaint, that would fall under our law and rules, specifically under fiscal dishonesty of any kind, or there's several listed under the disciplinary action and civil penalties under our law and rules. So with that being said, originally we thought close, and have the respondent sign a consent order, but then teasing that even more, it's just, we thought about a letter of instruction about what our law and rules say in situations such as this, because at this point, if the board is more comfortable with the consent order, we can do that. But when you kind of think through it, it's requiring the respondent to abide by the law, which they're already charged to do once they have a license. So that's kind of the train of thought behind this particular recommendation.
It kind of made sense to me, but I wanted just to make sure that everybody understood that this was different than what we've done in the past. And so, committee members, any questions?
Janet, so does that mean we're going to follow up and make sure the respondent sends in the information, or?
That would be, yes, in the letter, I can say, and this will be something that I create, but just, thank you for notifying us of this matter. At this point, there's, no violation of our law and rules. Under such and such law, you are charged with notifying the board should this matter, should you be found guilty of, whatever matter. And usually these cases are settled and the terms of the settlement is confidential. So that's usually how it ends up. But if there were to be a judgment entered against the respondent and he didn't notify us, yeah, that would be a violation. Like a double violation almost.
But just to clarify her question, Maria, when we would put these in litigation monitoring, I mean, you would reach out every quarter with the attorney or the respondent to check on the status of the case. And in this situation, they signed the consent order and agree to notify us, and we don't follow up, every quarter. They just are responsible because they've signed that consent order for getting back with us.
Mm-hmm.
And if they
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
and if they don't, there's a chance that we would not know,
Exactly.
right? I mean, because we're not going to be picking up the phone and touching base with them or their attorney after they sign that consent order.
Yes. The hope is that, and there again, I mean, that this respondent was so cautious as to, notify the board at the onset of the matter, that they would hopefully, be honest and abide by our law and rules.
So if they don't, we just may not know, and that's fine.
So if they don't, then we would have on record that they agreed to do this. And then at that point, I mean, that's not only a violation for breaking the consent order that they agreed to with the board, but also a violation of our law and rules for not reporting X matter.
Well, I guess I'm just wondering how what in our process would alert us that they didn't report. And
we would compel. Well, the hope of it is that we would compel them to reach out to us again.
So there's nothing that may let us know whether he reached out or not.
We could potentially, and this is an administrative, but we could flag the license to check it renewal. Just that's a consideration.
I guess I'm just wondering about that. And I mean, if we're not going to follow up, and if that's not going to be an issue, then I guess I'm just wondering if we want to just close this in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be on the hook for, a potential lack of follow-up.
Yeah. Are you saying, Janet, more along the lines of letter of instruction of in the event that a judgment of negligence is entered against the respondent, then they'd be charged with notifying the board?
Yeah, maybe that'd be more appropriate. I'm just wondering. I don't guess it's that big of a deal, but I was just curious.
When I read through it, I'm okay with the close and respondent sign a consent order because it's going to come out through the paper or somewhere else, or somebody else is going to say, hey, did y'all know about this CPA and what just happened? But it would seem like that we would pretty much have him or her at that point to really, I mean, it would be a bad situation for them to be in, to say that they agreed to tell us and didn't.
And Janet, maybe I'm not being clear, but the consent order language, the intent of that would be that the responsibility is on the respondent to follow up.
Right, yeah, I understand that, and if they don't, then we may or may not know. And if we're okay with that, then I guess that's okay. Anyway, we don't have to belabor this.
I'm going to jump in there at that invitation.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Janet. I like the concept of teeth, if you will, to require follow-up or someone coming back. Conceptually, though, struggle a little bit with saying that we're going to ask someone to sign a consent order when no violation has been proven. It feels funny to me. I just, yeah. I'm a little uncomfortable on this one.
What would you feel like if we do that and then take legal off the hook, but actually have a staff member maybe call once a quarter and say, has there been any update that I can forward to legal associated with?
I'm fine with that if it's administratively doable, or if if there's an option to flag it for renewal. I mean, it's a civil case. Most courts are shut down right now. This is going to drag. Why put burden on our staff to follow up on something that's not going to get set and not going to move? And so I would put the flag on following up a little later, either associate it with the renewal if our system can do that, or something else to remember, hey,
yeah,
we send a letter saying, thank you for notifying us. Please let us know of resolution. And then we add this administrative flag for us to make sure that's happened would be my preferred course, assuming administratively that's feasible.
Looks like he would.
Consent order? Would the consent order be okay to do it? The consent order requiring a respondent to provide the board the pertinent information?
I'm just really uncomfortable presenting a consent order when the licensee hasn't, at this point, been proven to have done something wrong.
When it looks like his license expires in 2022, so is it possible to at renewal to somehow know that at the latest that nothing has, if you all hadn't gotten anything in?
That's just something I've got to go check on. That's not a normal part of the process, meaning if, we have standard questions that you answer. So that flags things, and then we can add flags, but they're somewhat restrictive. So we're just going to have to look into whether that is an option at renewal specifically, and whether it would cause something to stop so that staff could look at it.
Right.
So we just have to confirm that we can do that.
Maria, I like the creativity here. I just wanted to make sure I was clear that it made me a little uncomfortable. But Stuart, I think you were going to hop in there. I'll be quiet.
Right. Well, I was going to answer your question about that consent order. On this consent order, there's no violation. It's just a requirement that the respondent notify us of what's going on, just an update. So there's no violation on there.
Right. I just think anything styled as a consent order, it just feels like we're jumping ahead a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more just a monitoring agreement.
Yeah, I'd rather. Yeah, if there's some.
We're not gonna monitor.
My preferred method here is a letter of instruction, but that's obviously up to you all if you are comfortable with that.
I'm not uncomfortable with that.
Do they sign the letter of? Can we have a sign and return the letter of instruction, or at least you request that they do?
I could maybe like have them acknowledge receipt.
Yeah, just an acknowledgement. I'm not trying to create a contract, but just an acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Yeah, an acknowledgement of receipt would be sufficient.
Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, if we're not going to follow up anyway, at least do what we're going to do and get some acknowledgement, and we're done anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So what'd you call that? A letter of instruction. Letter of instruction. With acknowledgement of receipt.
Mm-hmm.
Or saying we still, do we usually request an acknowledgement of receipt?
Not typically.
Because if we don't get the receipt, then
this is something new that we haven't done before. So that
I understand that. Maybe we shouldn't do it. I would just be comfortable with a letter of instruction.
Well, let's try to get the acknowledgement of receipt. That would be great.
Well, but anyway, if you don't get it, then what are you gonna do? Nothing.
Well, then that's another violation because you're required to keep the board up to date on your, address and contact information.
So how would you know if you got it or not?
The old-fashioned way. Certified.
Yeah, we could send it certified.
No, okay. Is that what you're talking about? Okay. That they would sign for it. Sign for this letter. Yeah, that would do. Okay.
All right. Any other questions, or I assume Maria, you'll update that for us for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I had a question on number 5.
Okay.
The ethics course is on demand, right? Tennessee ethics course.
Correct.
I don't know why this person didn't know, but is there a reason why CPAs wouldn't know that that's out there on demand, or do we need to advertise that more maybe?
Janet, just from the fact that this respondent gave me, she said she was traveling back and forth to North Carolina. Her mother was ill for a period of time, and then she passed away. I don't know if that may be added to the stress, but I consider that a mitigating factor in the recommendation.
Okay, so it was more due to the illness than she couldn't do the course. That's what I was saying. If it's on demand, you can do that anywhere, but yeah.
I think it was more, Janet, her life was just a bit crazy at that time.
Yeah, and I guess enough people know that we do have that on-demand course. This isn't so much about her per se, but just to, just kind of, that's not for other people, that they don't know that course is out there on demand.
Well, we have a page on the website for exactly where you can go to obtain that course.
Mm-hmm.
I know TSCPA regularly shares it with their members as well. So,
so they should know. Membership CPA should know.
And we talk about it in our newsletter too. So
yeah, okay.
Any other questions on the 1 through 7? right. Then I would propose that we actually have a roll call vote for consent agendas, cases number 1 through 7, with the change, as we just talked about on number 7, to indicate that it would be a letter of instruction with receipt of that letter, either via email where we get the receipt back, or the old-fashioned way, postal mail certified proof of mailing. So, well, I think we're ready for a roll call.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Karen. So now we go forward to page 6 and number 8. We're going to go look at the proposed disciplines. We have 4 of them today. The first one on number 8 is associated with a holding out as a licensee. Respondent stated that she was a certified public accountant in tax engagement agreement. After the fact, the respondent was not registered as with the board as a CPA or in other such states. The respondent has not responded to the board attorney's attempts for communication. With that, then the recommendation is to authorize a formal hearing with the authority to settle via consent order upon the respondent's payment of the civil penalty in the amount of $1,000 for using the CPA designation without proper licensure. Any comments or questions on that one?
I have a comment.
Oh, sorry, just real quick. I wanted to add one fact to this summary. So I know the respondent has received this complaint because after many phone calls and emails, I left her a voicemail and she emailed me back saying that she was going to send me a formal response in writing. She has not done so, but I know she has a complaint. I know she's aware that I'm trying to get in touch with her. So anyway, I just wanted to make that clear.
I was surprised that this seems to be treated like some of the cases where somebody accidentally violated a rule. This, to me, is fraud. I mean, am I wrong? Did this person state overtly that she was a CPA and she was not? This sounds very serious and probably like a legal matter, even beyond us, but it just sounds huge to me.
So at this point, I don't know every side of the story of what exactly transpired. However, I just went off the discipline matrix for that violation.
Andy, can I jump in here on this one? I'm not a committee member. I'm with Pam. This is like a flagrant violation. We've seen people do this accidentally, or we've seen people like imply that they were CPA or use the word accountant or something like that, but she's duly licensed in the state of Tennessee as a CPA. I mean, that's just, like Pam said, that's just almost like fraudulent. Seems like we'd have a little higher penalty on something like this. That's just, I'm not a committee member.
Thank you both. I just went by the discipline matrix. The normal violation is $1,000 for unauthorized use of terms associated with CPAs and documents or names. And then the aggravating factors, it'd be $1,000 per month of operation. We'll only have a single instance in which she submitted this contract. That's all the evidence that I have for this. So I think $1,000 is the appropriate way if we're just going to be consistent and try to go off of what we've done in the past.
I'm looking here and I don't see anything else in the matrix that'll, if they were licensed, of course we wouldn't have this problem, but I don't see anything else for an unlicensed person that other than this, and unless I'm totally mistaken.
So is this something that Sherry would investigate? Is this something that Sherry could, or would ask, are you doing this on all your contracts? Are you doing all this? Are you doing this on every engagement letter? I mean, if we found that she was doing this on every engagement letter that she does, that would be $12,000. I'm just asking, did we ask?
So, sorry, Larry, you're kind of breaking up, but Sherry did not investigate this one. It was just a blatant, I received a complaint that included the contract where the respondent had CPA. In that contract, like I said, she hasn't been the most responsive either. So I'm not sure if that investigation would have been fruitful. If this is something you guys, if we could attempt to send out for an investigation, I'm anticipating having to file notice of charges on this one just due to the respondent's failure to communicate with them. And there is, title usage. I mean, it's obviously protected. There are cases when it's super egregious that this person is, refusing to not, to abide by the law and continues to hold out as a CPA, that you can refer to the DA. But just in all honesty, this isn't something that would probably go very far at this point. So
everybody check your mics, make sure they're muted. I think we got one mic open. Any other comments? I agree. I think that this is pretty blatant. Probably holding themselves out like that, but I'm not sure what else we can do, but besides the $1,000 penalty from our seat.
Could we go on the fact that it was more than one service that she engaged to do? And she agreed to do the taxes, there's 4 things listed here that she was going to do, and for each one of those, she was putting herself out as a CPA.
I'm looking up here, but I guess I'd ask Marie or Stewart to jump in here and give us their thoughts.
Sorry, this isn't real quick. Just the aggravating factors. It's kind of more along the lines of per month of operation. So it's like she had been conducting, her practicing or holding out as this for 4 months. I think that'd be more appropriate. Anyway, I'll let Stewart.
Could the board maybe ask that Sherry go back and look at this further? Try to find her, contact her?
That's fine if you guys want to do that.
I would think that would be good because for these services that are listed, none of them require a CPA license to offer those services. But if she's consistently using engagement letters to say she's a CPA, that seems like that would be important to find out if, she's using that same engagement letter all the time with other engagements and just holding herself out to be a CPA when she's not.
Yeah. No, I certainly understand. I want to say this respondent, like I said, has not been very cooperative. And also, I know that the complainant hired like a private, they're doing a civil suit and they have not been able to get in touch with the respondent that way either. So I just kind of want to give heads up that I'm not sure how fruitful an investigation. We might come back in May with the exact same information and have to proceed in filing charges. So just kind of throw that out there.
Any other comments or?
Maria, you may not know the answer to this, but do we know if this person has a website?
From what I understand, she doesn't have a personal website right now. what I've been told by the complainant is that she worked at a bigger firm, and then she decided to go solo, and this was like one of her first, attempts at doing her own thing. So there again, like I'm saying, I really don't know if the respondent would respond to me, then we could figure out maybe this is something she copied and pasted off the internet. I don't know, I don't know if it was willful and fraudulent, you would think so, but I don't have the full story.
So suggestions from the committee for recommendations.
Well, what are our options? Maria, is it feasible to say we need to follow up before setting an amount, or in your opinion, is that just going to be a waste of time?
I think this is going to go to hearing either way, but if you guys are more comfortable with having Sherry try to conduct an investigation, that's fine. I mean, it's up to you all. There again, I just based off of what I know so far in my experience, if Sherry investigates and says how many, of these letters have you sent out, are we going to get a truthful answer? There again, I don't know. That's a toss-up. Sherry, do you have any comment?
The only comments I would have is, all I can do is pose the questions. I mean, I usually don't pose them as directly as how many of these agreements have you sent out like this. I usually kind of approach it in terms of how many engagements have you had, what kind of work are you doing, to where I can sort of feel around and have them give me a response before asking something that directly. So, we might, just asking her more about what she's been doing solo on her own. If I'm able to contact her, you can sort of get a roundabout thing and then ask for contracts to follow that up. But I would agree that if you ask her point blank, how many of these agreements are outstanding like this, she'd probably say none.
I think I'm okay with your recommendation.
Remember, we're going to get a consent order that says that she won't use the designation plus the fine.
After the explanations, I'm okay with it too. I think it's just unfortunate that we don't know more, but it seems like it would be a dead end. So I'm okay with it too.
Okay, any further questions or comments? I get a feeling that the board or the committee is recommending that we accept that and go forward. All right, seeing none, let's go to number 9. The Tennessee Motor Vehicle Commission forwarded a compilation report to the Board of Accountancy for an auto dealership license. The report was issued by the respondent on the firm's letterhead and signed by the respondent. Respondent holds an active CPA license and an expired firm permit with the board. While the respondent's firm's permit expired on 12/31/16, it appears the respondent is enrolled in an approved peer review program. The respondent was asked to provide the board with information regarding the complaint, and he has not responded. With that, the recommendation is authorize a formal hearing with the authority to settle via consent order upon the respondent's payment of the civil penalty of $1,000 for issuing the test services on an expired firm permit.
Also, Andy, this is another one I needed to comment on. Okay. We have respondents of the last hour over here. So this individual has responded as of Friday, and he is working with the board right now, the board staff, to reactivate his firm permit. We also asked, so we have we know that he's enrolled in a peer review program. Just don't know the status of any of that. So I spoke with Wendy about this, and we thought about adding to this recommendation that he provide proof of an accepted peer review by August 30th, 2021. We've done that in the past with respondents, and it seems like a good route to hold the respondent accountable. And then some more information the respondent gave me is that he said he's been in and out of the hospital with major surgeries. However, I haven't had opportunity to get evidence, of any of that from his doctor. We usually require documentation of some sort just for these types of mitigating factors, I guess. But when I did talk to him, it didn't seem like he was willfully avoiding this. He just seemed kind of aloof to some of the requirements. So that's the added fact.
So add to this that he provide a copy of the peer review by August of what day did you say?
August 30th, 2021.
Okay. And that any factors related to the any medical factors related to the delay will be provided as mitigating factors.
So this one's kind of interesting because I'm trying to think through procedurally, because if I receive that once you guys have already made a decision, I can still ask for that just to have. But also, so if you'll see that he previously had an older complaint. So the $1,000, I didn't do an aggravating civil penalty just because of the mitigating factors of the health issues, but usually mitigating would be $750. So I just did the middle $1,000, $1,000 civil penalty. I hope that makes sense. But on the back end, if you guys would like me to, get evidence of his medical, something just proving that, I'd be happy to do that.
Is this one that we should probably go find the rest of the information because of his past and make sure that we do have the fact that he is, that we do have a peer review report? Or, I mean, I guess that being the fact that he was fined $4,000 for unlicensed activity and failure to enroll peer review, it might be more appropriate to say, well, before you issue $1,000, let's go see what he does have, because he may not be telling us the truth.
Mm.
Wendy and I are in communication with him, just trying to get more documentation regarding the peer review. And also, just keep in mind, if he does sign this consent order requiring proof of enrollment and peer review by August 30th, 2021, and he doesn't provide that by that deadline, or it's not responsive to us, we have the authority to revoke or suspend because he's in violation.
Okay. So we'll ask for a consent order to provide the peer review report by 8/30/2021 as an addition to what we already have.
Let's do August 31st because that's standard, is the last day of the month.
Okay.
Thanks, Wendy.
All right. Any comments or questions from the committee members?
Did we confirm that he paid the $4,000 civil penalty from before?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he has paid that.
Any other questions or comments?
Hey, Andy, not on this one. On the next, given the time, I guess if there are certain, I would make a suggestion. I don't know that it's a formal motion, but assuming that all of us have read the rest of the report, maybe stick to the discussion rather than summary. Save a little bit of time. Not to cut you short of having some moment in your time in the sun.
Okay. Well, I'm all for it. So I'll get very short with them and we'll ask for comments. Okay. So we'll have her change that one for tomorrow, and we'll vote on that in just a second. So I'll go to number 10 and just state that number 10 is holding out as a licensee, using the word accounting in the business name without a licensure, and the recommendation is that we get a consent order from the respondent and not to use the word accounting in the business name and fine for $1,000. Any questions related to that one? Okay, seeing none. Number 11, we have an unlicensed activity peer review violation, independence violation. Respondent issued a review report without an active firm permit or an enrollment in peer review. Respondent is an employee of the client referenced in the review report. And so with that, we're recommending a $1,500 civil penalty and a consent order, specifically for $750 for independence violation, $750 for peer review, and firm permit violation.
Andy, can I jump in on this?
Yes, sir.
Couple of comments. We seem to attempt to mitigate his thing about the ethics because he hadn't been licensed. He was only licensed 17, and he didn't have to do the state course yet. But when you go through college and get an accounting degree, take the exam, you're exposed to not Tennessee ethics, but I mean these were not specific to Tennessee type ethics situations. These were just ethics in general. Anybody that goes through college and gets an accounting degree and passes the exam and doesn't realize that he can't do a review on his own employer, I mean, that's serious. He missed classes somewhere along the way. So I'm just asking, is that $750 the low level of that penalty, or is that saying that we're giving him a break?
So $750 is the mitigating factor, Larry. I'd be happy to change it to $1,000 if you're more comfortable with that. That's the standard.
Well, here again, I'm not on the committee, but I don't think it's mitigated by his recent not having to take ethics in Tennessee, because these are not Tennessee violations. These are just general. And the next one, the $750 for peer review, in that two different violations, peer review and firm permit, wouldn't there be $750 for both of those, each of them?
We've been doing them together. That $1,000 is standard.
Okay. Well, I think my opinion, I'm not on the committee, but my opinion, that ethics, I mean, that's a flagrant ethics violation to do a report on somebody you work for.
What was the mitigating factor there again?
So this respondent, from my opinion, Sherry investigated, and she can also talk to this, but he was very compliant, apologetic, said it was stupid, wouldn't do it again. He didn't take the ethics course, but all of you who are in the field seem to be very triggered by this violation, more so than somebody who's outside of the accounting, field. So I'm there again. I'm happy to increase it. I just, sometimes I just feel bad for people.
Also a good case study in don't take staff work for granted.
I would concur that he was cooperative and provided, the information, did not try to conceal anything. I can add that to the discussion. I will say that whereas maybe in classes and stuff like firm renewals, firm permits, and peer review are not necessarily covered in the classroom, I have to agree with Larry about the independence issue. And I'll just leave it at that.
Typically, haven't we been assessing a penalty of $3,000 lack of enrollment in a peer review?
So that's if it's a firm that is wanting to do a test work and Wendy, you can jump in and help explain historically if I'm messing this up. But the 3,000 is if it's a firm that is just not enrolled and wants to continue to offer firms.
No. Sorry. The 3,000 has typically been when audit work's involved, and 1,000 is when compilations and reviews are involved, and that stems back to basically what it costs the firm in order to, through a peer review process, to comply. So if you're doing an audit, you have to have a system peer review, which costs you quite a bit more than having an offsite engagement review, which you would have with a compilation or a review. I think in this particular situation, I think the independence issue is the biggest issue. He never should have done the engagement. He's not in a position to do the engagement. He doesn't have a firm. He never intended to have a firm. He never intended to do peer review or have peer review. So that's kind of the side thing to me. I think this is almost all about the independence issue, is that he attempted to do a review engagement for his employer. So
also, I just want to add one more thing after looking at the discipline matrix. So it's kind of confusing because for mitigating factors for violations such as this, it's from $500 to $750, and then the normal violation is from $750 to $1,000. So I think I landed on $750 because it was in both. There again, like I said, this is up to you all. If you want to increase it to $1,000, I'm happy to do that. But that's kind of my reasoning, I think, behind it.
Okay, straw poll committee members, you want to go up to the $1,000 times 2 on this one for the independence and peer review violations?
I was going to split it and do 1,000 for the independence and keep peer review as is. No offense, Maria. I generally like your recommendations.
That sounds fair to me. What any other committee members? Does that sound okay?
I agree. I think that's a good idea.
So
Good with me.
Good suggestion, Todd. Okay, so we'll change that one for tomorrow too. So that gets
so can
us.
I just clarify? Sorry, I need to clarify real quick. $1,000 for the independence, and then keep peer review in the firm at $750. Is that correct?
That's correct with my motion.
Got it.
All right, with those 2 changes on number 11 and also number 9, then we have concluded our proposed disciplines from cases 8 through 11. So I would ask for a motion or from the committee to approve those, and then a roll call.
Motion.
Second.
All
right. So I'd ask Karen to do a roll call to approve those.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Ms. Booker Davis.
You're on mute.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
Okay, we've got 2 cases left, so we'll go to re-representations. Case number 12, the respondent was disciplined by SEC, right suspended. The recommendation from legal is consent order requiring respondent to appear before the board before reactivation of license. Now the kind of the update here is respondent voluntarily closed license in November of 2020. And so with that respondent, since he has license that we require, the requirement to appear before the board is under reinstatement rule that concerns suspended or revoked license. Respondent has agreed to appear before the board if he decides to reinstate his license, and a revised consent order will now need to be reflected on that agreed requirement. So we would actually add that to his agreement. Any questions or comments on that, or would legal like to jump in and add anything to that? It's pretty straightforward. All right, seeing none, we'll go to number 13. Number 13 is a unlicensed activity, peer review violation, holding out as a licensee. You've got the previous history as the one before of all the items that that was actually brought up in the past on this one. The proposed reduction of civil penalty from $3,000 to $2,000 is now the recommendation. And this was after one of Larry Elmore actually sat and talked with the respondent, and the informal conference was held with one board member, actually Larry, respondent, and board and staff. Respondent states that he was unaware of the rules at the time of the violation, but accepts responsibility. Respondent agrees to remove any references on the website that led the public to believe he was a CPA offering a test services. So,
I've never heard Larry propose reducing a penalty.
Thanks, Todd. I appreciate that.
So you've got my support on this one.
Any further comments or questions?
This should not suppress it, please.
Understood.
Andy, as chair of the committee, I'd just like to also thank Larry for taking the time to set in this informal conference. This is a vehicle that we've begun to use a little bit more frequently in an effort to kind of the difference and also arrive at an outcome that is fair, but also avoids, the significant efforts that are called for in the case of formal hearing in terms of the administrative law judge and everything else. And so, Larry, just appreciate your time in doing this and attempting to reach a structure that was acceptable to all.
Yeah, and let me
Yes, Kevin, I'd like to echo that as well and Larry, just give our thanks from legal because you did a great job representing the board and being concise, and you all would have been proud. So I do appreciate your time and effort in settling that.
Excellent. I do have one question, Maria. In your recommendation there on the legal report, you're recommending that the recommendation is to change the penalty to $2,000, 2 times $1,000 for each violation. Do we have to say what? In other words, it was $3,000. There were 3 times that we're going to lower it. We have to stipulate what each violation was for, or can we just say we're reducing those to 2,000? The reason I ask,
we can just put. Sorry.
The reason I ask is that there were 3 things that the penalty was for. First, it was performing a test service without a license or a permit. The second was using report language, which implied that you were licensed $1,000, and then using the title of accountant $1,000. So I don't know which one were. So now say it's $2,000 for X and X. It's almost like we're giving one of those.
We don't have to spell that out in the consent order, and we usually don't spell that out in the actual agreement. So we can just put general, and then in the statement of facts, we can definitely include the mitigating factors that we discussed at the informal conference to kind of help give detail of that. Yeah,
and that's what I would suggest. And then the second thing, one of the things he agreed to was to clean up his website. to remove anything that would imply he was doing a test work. And I went back out there this morning just to kind of see how that looked. It's a whole different website now, but the attest reference is gone, but there's some references to some of his staff being called accountants, staff accountant, tax accountant, and so forth. I'm assuming you would do this already, but I think in the consent order, he would need to agree to remove any of those references from his website.
Yeah, we will definitely check that. And Sherry's really great and thorough in doing that as well. So I can get her to help me in doing that. I reached out to him personally and, told him what needed to be removed. So I put that language that he agrees to having all designations removed, because I know it was a request he had to make to his tax team. And so I had him just give me an email saying that he would agree to, take down everything that we needed him to. I just didn't want to put facts in there that were not true at the time of writing the, the legal report that was done, because I think it was a request.
Also on the committee, this person was very cooperative. He was very understanding that he did violate rules. But it's amazing to me how many times we run across people who don't know that the use of the word accountant is a violation. I mean, it's just all the time. And I don't know if there's we could go out there and do a commercial on TV about it or something. Somehow there needs to be a way we could get that out into the public, that don't call yourself an accountant if you're not. But anyway, this person was very cooperative, and I recommend that we make that change. And I will exclude myself from the vote since I was involved in the discussion.
Any other comments? Well, then we have representations 12 and 13 to represent here and to have a vote on. With that, I would ask for a motion to approve them as written and the recommendations for approval from the committee.
On number 12 and 13 only.
Yes,
okay.
Andy, excuse me, this is Kevin. One thing, when you say as written, I took it from Larry's comments on the recommendation under new information for item 13, that we would strike the parenthetical 1,000 for each attestation submitted without a firm permit from that new information, to be kind of consistent with Larry's comment that we wouldn't enumerate the violations there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Just take out that parentheses there.
Yeah.
Okay.
May I also confirm something maybe with Stuart? Is he still on the phone?
Yes.
Stuart, in number 12, we don't really say, and maybe we don't in any of these presentations, but we don't have a violation of any kind. Would that be laid out in the consent order so that should the respondent come back to obtain the license, the board would know what had occurred?
Well, I mean, based on history, they would know what has occurred. But at this point, we were just asking to agree to come before the board to reinstate, because at this point, by canceling the license, all he has to do is just come back and pay the dues and show CPE, and then he's active. This person doesn't plan on being a CPA or practice as a CPA. He's passed the bar. He's going to become an attorney. So we just want to make sure that he has to come before the board to discuss any type of reinstatement and any issues in the past.
I think what we've run into before, though, is if he comes back in 5 years and none of us are here, then legal has a hard time determining, or even longer, why he's in front of the board. And normally in a consent order, we have a violation. Are we going to have that in here? Was it going to state that he was disciplined by the SEC?
It's something that yeah, we've had a discussion about this because he's currently in litigation regarding the SEC issue.
I thought that was over.
No. There's a lot of litigation that doesn't pertain to anything for the board. It's more of appeals and things based on his termination. Also, there's some legal malpractice issues that pertain to the SEC allegations and agreement. So what we've kind of come to an agreement is, as long as he agrees to come before the board for reinstatement, then we can go ahead and put this matter to rest. He's already canceled, so we can't suspend. And I mean, that suspension is ended December of 2020.
Well, it hasn't ended because it doesn't end until you go before the SEC and request it back. So he'll be suspended
until
forever.
Until he requests. But the date was 3 years, and then he could come back to reinstate under the SEC. But it doesn't look like he's going to do that.
I guess my question, I guess what I'm just trying to make sure is that the whole reason this came before us was because he was suspended by the SEC for violations. And what I'm hearing from you is that's not going to really be stated in the consent order. Is that the case?
There will be some history of the SEC, yes. Of the violation, or not a violation, but that he agreed to an SEC order.
Okay, so if at some point he comes back before the board, then we would be able to get back to that SEC order, so the board would know, would have something to discuss.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
All right. Any other comments or questions from the committee? Or any of the board members on that one? All right, then we'll vote on accepting the new information and the recommendations associated with it, with the change on number 13 to strike out the part in parentheses for each attestation submitted without a firm permit, since there was 3, and just reference a civil penalty of $2,000. They have a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Is it a second?
Second.
All right. Karen, please do us a roll call for approval.
Andy Bonner.
Aye.
Janet Booker Davis.
Aye.
Pamela Church.
Aye.
Greg Gilbert.
Aye.
Todd Skelton.
Aye.
All righty. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Andy.
Enforcement
Appreciate
Committee.
that, and appreciate the Enforcement Committee members' work, and also staff work in preparing the legal report and teeing up all the cases for us and the consideration that was given to them. The next committee up is the Law and Rules Committee, and Mr. Elmore is our chair for that one. So I'll turn it over to you here, Larry.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm going to back over to Maria to update us on the status of that things that we're trying to get pushed through.
Thank you, Larry. So the update I have for you all, since our last meeting in October, this rule has received internal approval from the department, and then it was routed to the Attorney General's office for approval, and then the Governor's office. And now I am going to file it with the Secretary of State for rulemaking hearing, which will take place on the May meeting. So that is the update. It's moving along as fast as this process will allow us to. So you all can anticipate the rulemaking hearing in May.
Mr. Chairman, that's the only thing the Laws and Rules Committee has, so we can make up some time here.
Well, all right. You all were nice and concise here. I Appreciate that. We'll go right to the executive report, and really the meat of that report is going to be the financial results. And for that, I'll turn it over to Wendy, our executive director, to just briefly highlight the review of the results that was included in the read-ahead packet.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your documents, you have the net position statement that we received from our fiscal department, in addition to operating results compared to the same time last year and compared to budget, with some discussions of each of those. We still aren't into the meat of our revenue cycle, so it's still a little preliminary, but I'll go through the numbers that we have so far. One thing to note is we usually talk about travel during the executive committee, and of course we are not traveling due to the pandemic. And something I'll note in the board meeting tomorrow, but the executive director and legal conference has been announced that it's going to be virtual, so we won't be traveling for that. So the only travel that could occur is the NASBA regional meetings, if those indeed go forward in person. So we'll wait and see on that.
I can actually update us on that. The regional meetings will not occur in person.
Okay.
NASBA has punted all the way to 6:30
Okay.
meetings. So and more update on that tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so really no travel for the year. But we'll go through where we are so far this fiscal year. The documents in front of you are for the period ending November of 2020. Our revenue is at $171,040, the end of November. And our expenses are coming in at $342,412. Of that, our salaries, benefits, technology, direct expenses to the board come to $253,313, and our cost backs from the assistant commissioner's office are at $47,485, and then we also have legal cost backs at $33,983, and centralized complaints and customer service center at around $7,500, and so that's leaving us in the red at currently at $171,000. But again, we haven't hit the bulk of our revenue for the year. So we are usually in the red up until this point normally. So if you go to the next couple of pages, we'll compare where we were this time this year to where we were last year. The significant point to note, we are down 20% in revenue. And I do expect this to come back. We still have licensees renewing. A couple of issues are attributing to this. One is that we had some significant IT issues when the renewals launched at the beginning of November. Therefore, we delayed our mailed notices until almost the end of, I think it was the 1st of December before we sent the mailed notices out. And so the only people renewing during the month of November were folks that already knew they needed to renew because they're used to doing it. And we still get a significant amount of those folks. But that was one of the things. The second thing, of course, we saw last year as well, people aren't renewing until they complete all of their CPE. And so we have two kind of significant things that are adding to probably the delay in the renewal. So I'm anxious to see how December looks for us. From a number of licensees that have renewed, we are on track for individual licensees. We're a little behind with firms, but individuals were on track. So I expect this is going to come back to where we expect it to be. And so the other, significant, obviously no travel is being documented there. Salaries, benefits are a little above expectation. Longevity is always over the prior year because those eligible for longevity compensation receive more each year that they are in service with the state. So let's see, the other things on here, the other big item is the state professional services line item, which you'll see is up 72%. And I've asked for more detail in this area. I do think it revolves around technology and IT work that's been done for our board. either related to our upgrade in our platform that caused some of our IT issues, as well as just some specific things that we've had to put tickets in for to get resolved for our licensees. And so I think that's an increase there. I also think that last year at the same time, we were missing a lot of expenses. I'm just trying to get verification and confirmation of that. So at this time last year, I believe a lot of things had not hit our financials yet that normally hit in that line item. So when we break it all down to the bottom line, our expenditures are $342,412 this year versus a $361,125 last year. We are down in expenses, but of course our big drop in revenue is putting us in the red more significantly than we were last year at this same time. So I hope I have a better update. I'm sure I'll have a better update next time we meet. But if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to try to answer those.
Not hearing any questions from board members. Thank you, Wendy, for the update and the summary with respect to the financial information. I believe that concludes our committee business for today. I know there was a lot of heavy lifting, particularly on the part of the licensing committee, as well as the usual heavy lifting on the enforcement committee. Larry, thank you for giving us a break on laws and rules today. But we appreciate the updates from staff and the preparation. And I know that the detailed work that we did today, I think will make tomorrow's work go a little bit more smoothly. So appreciate everybody's efforts on that. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone virtually, at least in on our actual board meetings tomorrow morning. And we will adjourn until then. So thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.